Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Wine Down. We've made it.
It's the end of the week. We've got wine in little fun glasses.
Yep, that's right. Well, I'm
Oh, sorry, not both of us.
I'm
I have
hydrating while she's getting dehydrated. I miss getting dehydrated, you know?
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, I know. For every glass of wine, I have a glass of water.
Right? That's what they say. And
If we were a combined human,
right?
we would be doing this perfectly.
Yeah. That's what they do say to prevent a hangover, especially in your 30s. But,
Yes, it does. It actually does help. If you remember to do it, I mean, it really does.
it does.
Yeah, if you're like that, if you're going to the bar and you're like really that with it, to be like,
Right.
I need to go get my water after you have your drink.
And you've muscled your way to the bar and you're like, can I get a water? And they're like, no.
I know.
Water's at the end of the bar and you're like, oh, it's so far away.
Exactly.
I'll just have another beer.
That's when you know you're getting old.
Yeah.
Oh my god. You're like, I have to go to the water and get my. I have to go to the bar and get my water. To have one in between every drink.
Exactly.
Okay. I don't want a hangover. I mean, I remember having hangovers in my 20s, but I also remember not caring.
Right. It's way easier to muscle through them. You're just like, all right, I know what to do and let's get going.
Yeah, I mean, it's like whatever.
Yeah. It's true.
I don't know. Maybe we just get like lazier with them as we get older.
Maybe. I feel like they're more aggressive as you get older.
Yeah,
though.
they are more aggressive. Let's be real. But with that being said, drink your wine. I hope you're drinking your wine or your or whatever chosen
Beverage. Choice.
Yeah, anything. No judgment here. Because we're going to be talking about gender pay gaps.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting, and there's a lot of different articles out in the news right now about how it's the 50th anniversary of Title IX.
Yep,
this
that's
year,
right.
which is awesome. I mean, it's had mixed results. I think there's a lot of great things that have come out of it, obviously. You know, I don't think either of our lives would be the same if Title IX hadn't happened.
Not. Right.
But there's certainly a ways to go.
Totally. I mean, there's one statistic so this article from Gender Gaps in Retirement Readiness and Financial Know-How Persist Despite Strides Made by Women in the Last 50 Years. And this is from CNBC. Okay, so this is a study that was released by the TIAA Institute that showed 27% gap in what men versus women were contributing to their retirement. And in 2012, there was a 34% gap, which feels like it's kind of slowly closing.
Right.
But, you know, it would be nice to see a larger, advancement made.
Less than 5%.
Yeah.
Like, let's get there.
Let's just be equal.
Let's be equal. That's really where we should be. But like, maybe in the next 10 years, which is the last time that they've released this, we get to less than 5. And then the next 2 years, we could get to equals.
I know. It is interesting because sometimes you sort of forget that like it's our reality as women, I think, because we're always like, fighting to push forward and sort of pretend that we just exist in this equal world in a way, And then you read articles like this and you're sort of reminded of the reality of our situation.
Yes.
And that's not, I mean, I've actually had some experiences where in a job, well, I can be super transparent about it if you want. This isn't wine, though.
I'll take a sip, though.
Okay, well, on Broadway, I was working on Broadway, and the way it works is if you're a principal in the company, meaning you're playing one of the main roles, right? Like your role has a name. You could be in the ensemble, which means you're maybe a dancer and you're playing multiple small parts throughout it. But if you're a principal, you're under a different kind of contract. The plus side of being a principal is typically you get paid a little bit more money. So that's great.
Yeah.
And obviously there's some accolade that comes with it as well, and cast announcements. So there's those things. But then if you're in the ensemble, there's the benefit of an open-ended contract. So you can stay in that ensemble track as long as you want.
Oh.
If you're a principal, you can get renewed, but typically not more than once or twice, because they like to bring in new people for publicity, right? For like, these new cast members are coming in, right? So that it's short-lived. You make more money, but it's not as steady.
Things I didn't know.
Yes. And so I was in Wicked for a long time, actually. I was the longest running Nessa Rose in Wicked. I wear that title proudly. So that meant that my contract was renewed quite a few times. And with each renewal, you get a pay bump.
There you go.
Yes. And so my role, I had a role that played opposite me was a male role, right? And this person that played opposite me, we were very good friends. And he joined the company later on. I had already been there for years, okay? And I've done contract renewals for a while now. And actually all the principals were really transparent when we got to negotiations, because a bunch of us were being renewed and we wanted to like have that conversation, you know, with each other about what's going on and what are people asking for and what are they coming back with, you know, to kind of gain some of our power back in a way.
Yeah.
And Smart. Well, the producers probably wouldn't like to hear this. But yeah, I found out that the male counterpart, we share the same responsibility in the show, was offered much more of a pay bump than I ever was. And I had been there longer.
As a percentage of a salary or as a total salary?
As a percentage of it. It's like an addition to, right?
Yeah.
And it was the first time I saw it in front of me in a very real way. And I didn't know what else it could possibly be. I mean, you know, we were of similar status. There wasn't really anything, our roles were,
right.
You know,
all things were felt equal otherwise.
Totally. And if anything, I had been with it longer, so I should have been given a higher percentage, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the first time that, and part of me was like, man, maybe I wish we didn't have the conversation, because now I don't even know how to address this, you know? It's like, how do you...
Had you already signed your contract?
No.
Renewal, so were you able to use that information to go in and negotiate a little bit better?
I did. I mean, I contacted my agents and I told them what was going on, but it's still a very like sensitive topic. And I could even tell that my agents were sort of uncomfortable with how they wanted to handle it, because then it's saying, hey, your cast is talking to each other, which honestly, I mean, here I am saying it right now to all of you. Like, I don't care if they see this and they hear it.
Technically, it's not illegal, and you actually should be talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that I think is one way to close the gap is to have these conversations, and you know, hopefully you have people that you're working with that want that for you as well. Like, I was very lucky to have someone working across from me who had my best interest in mind, and I had his. So we wanted to have that open dialogue so that we, you know, got the best results when it came to contract renewals. But it stung a little bit, because it was me recognizing like, I'm a woman and there are like discrepancies, and it's probably happened my whole life, and I just, you know, haven't been aware of it.
Oh man. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to talk about how the gender pay gap has also affected women in retirement.
Welcome back, everyone, to the wind down. We are winding down, but we are fired up.
We are.
Talking about gender pay gaps. Still happening today.
Oh, man.
It's very real.
Well, I think it's interesting. You know, 50 years of Title IX has really helped women in a lot of different ways. One of the ways is in study and also with careers. So I think there are a couple of stats that the article points out that in 1972, when Title IX came into effect, about 9.4% of law school students were female. Now it's over 56%.
Yay.
Which is exciting.
Yeah.
About 10% of medical school students were female, and now it's about 50%. So it's really exciting to see, especially in those careers where you're making more money, women are getting into those careers and studying those things.
Yeah.
But on the offset, you know, and there's a lot of talk about this, especially this year, I feel like has been about how women still make 82 cents per dollar that men do.
Which in 1973, a full-time working woman earned 56 cents for every dollar that they're, and yes, the gap is closed, but it's...
Right, but we're still 28%,
Yeah.
28 cents off. And that is for average females. That is, you know, it goes down significantly if you're female person of color or Latino is even worse than Black women. So like there's certainly still a lot of biases out there, and it's really, you know, I think how do we close the gap, people?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's this study released by TIAA, the Institute. It showed that men 65 and older are close to 500,000 at retirement compared to just over 200,000 for women.
Yeah, so having this difference in the pay gap, especially for women of retirement age, is huge. Like that's less than half.
I mean, yeah, that's really bad, but it does
and women
make
live
sense.
longer too.
Yeah, so there you go. But it makes sense because if women are earning less, they would be contributing less.
Right. It even affects Social Security. So,
of course, yeah.
Social Security, the average male gets a little bit over $1,800 a month, whereas the average female at 65 gets a little bit over $1,400 a month.
Right.
So again, that's a huge discrepancy.
It's hitting really hard in retirement.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, there's a lot of different things that you can do. Have, you know, really transparent conversations with your male colleagues to figure out that you are getting paid for the same amount of work and the same titles. I know that there's a lot of companies that are out there are putting pay bands out there as well as publishing how much people make. So you don't have to have these what feel like clandestine conversations.
I mean, that kind of transparency should just exist at this point, really, because I mean, people are just talking more.
Yes.
And becoming more comfortable, like, doing that. And you don't want to be the company that gets called out for...
Yeah.
Like, because now people will.
Right.
You know, they'll get on their social media, and they're going to call you out. And you know what happens next. It's not good.
It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah.
I think one other point that this article makes that I think is was actually the toughest for me to swallow. You know, it's sad that women still aren't making as much as men. We still aren't saving as much as men. But then they also had a survey that said of financial questions, and 45% of women answered 45% of the questions correctly. Right. Versus men answered 55% of the questions correctly. These are all financially based questions. And it was interesting though, baby boomer females answered 51% of the questions correctly versus 41% for millennials and 38% for Gen Z. So I think that really is a huge thing for us to continue to have this conversation, have these transparent conversations about money, about finances, about financial literacy.
I wonder with that though, if like the baby boomers, because they've had more time to learn, right? Like if they were asked those questions, like where Gen Z is now, if they'd be even below that number. True. But there is the whole thing with, I can completely understand why it would be that way, because I think we're breaking these stigmas, you know, down as we're talking about. But there's this like men's club where it's I pat your back, you pat mine, and it's almost like this secret club of like growing wealth where they're learning all the tricks of the trade, right? Right. And women for so long have not been invited to have those conversations over a glass of whiskey. You know what I'm talking about? And it's
right to go share that cigar after dinner or on the golf course or wherever these conversations are happening.
Yeah, it's
Not
it's
to
just
be
we have
stereotypical, but to be stereotypical.
but to be super typical. It's like we literally haven't been invited to the party, you know.
Yeah.
And on top of that, most of the people in the hiring positions, the CEOs, are men,
Right.
So
Still are.
they're spreading their knowledge to their fellow male counterparts, and we're not being invited to the club. So it makes sense to me that like women don't have the same resources at their literally their fingertips, you know, that men have had.
Yeah.
Ugh. Ugh. Let's drink some water to that. Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
And I think having these conversations, having them earlier, so Gen Z is also, and millennials are doing better things with their money from the get-go, because as we come back to this all the time, is that starting your retirement savings early is what's going to set you up in the long run and make it less financially burdensome to be prepared for retirement.
Yeah. And creating programs like having financial literacy be, you know, a required part of your education growing up, and just parents doing better, caretakers, everybody doing better to help positively influence these upcoming generations to set them up for success, so that, you know, women have the upper leg too.
Yeah.
It's like we have to kind of put in that legwork ourselves.
Right. I mean, it's like putting in double the work in order to get on equal footing, which
I know,
happens all the time.
Well, we both have little girls
who are
as
breaking
well.
the barriers.
Yes. So I don't know about you, but when I found out I was having a girl,
my first reaction was like, oh no, teenage years are going to be awful. That was my first reaction.
Totally. But I did have a lot of just societal fears that, and suddenly like all of my sort of internal like angst, like came to the surface, and I was like, I don't want that for her. I don't want her to feel like she's always fighting for something.
Right.
I want her to just be born knowing she has it. And I think there's a way to do that, but it's us having those really open dialogue and conversations to set them up so that they just feel empowered and ready to take on the world, you know?
Yeah, and feel as they should be, feel like they are on equal footing with anybody else.
Totally.
And giving them, the confidence to feel that way, even if they are at a disadvantage, which women still are, unfortunately.
Yeah. When I was just talking, my second little girl that's on the way just gave me a little, I think she agrees. She's like, set us up for success, Mom. I'm like, I'll do my best. I promise I'll try. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but we'll be right back to talk a little bit more about gender pay gaps. Welcome back, everyone. We are still here drinking our wine and our water, and we've got more to say in regards to these gender pay gaps and closing that gap.
Yes.
And I think, because we were talking about our little ones, and to be more specific.
Be more specific, because as we've learned also, when you have a goal that has specific parameters, you're more likely to reach it.
That's right. And
my goal right now is to have more wine.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Gender pay gaps, you need wine for gender pay gaps. Immediately, I think about what we've been talking about this week, actually, and like some of the articles that we were covering. Actually, we talk about it most weeks. It's about starting early.
Yes.
Starting a savings plan that is going to grow early.
Yep.
Is something I'm going to make sure they do. You know what I mean? It's
yes.
like, and I'm still learning so much more about it every single day, and I want to get better and better myself and improve my financial literacy so that by the time they enter the workforce, they are leaving college, or even if they have a part-time job while they're at college or whatever.
Right.
I really want to like implement paying themselves, you know, first, you know, that mindset as soon as possible so that when they're retiring, they're just like laughing. I want them laughing. Like Scrooge McDuck, but happy, you know, with money in the bed. Woo! You know?
I mean, he's happy when he's with his money, so yeah.
That's true.
He's just not happy on Christmas Eve because...
That's right. I think I forgot the story. I just have this image of these two little ducks, like with money everywhere.
I agree with you. I think, and one of the things that we have started to work with our daughter on is about, you know, the value of money. So even though she's only 4, we're starting to say, hey, oh, you would like that toy. That toy costs $20.
Right.
You know, especially outside of birthday and Christmas. We use those a lot too. Like, oh, do you want that? Okay, you can put it on your Christmas list. She got disappointed at her birthday where she didn't get everything she wanted. And I was like, yeah, that's what
Still not how it works exactly.
Sorry, but whatever.
It's like, I'll just make the list really long for my birthday and Christmas.
Exactly. But talking to her about the value of money and how working for it helps you earn money. So when she does chores around the house that are above and beyond what we ask her to help out with,
pay bump,
she gets a quarter, which, you know, it's tangible. She loves it.
Yes.
You know, it's something for her to work on. So that's one thing that we've worked on with her, because I think that in this day and age, especially of everybody using cards for things, and you know, you very rarely
out
carry
of sight, out of mind.
it's like such an untangible thing. You're like, oh, it's $20, doesn't matter.
Have them learn through like the concrete, you know, like I can touch, I can see, and then move on to that later.
Exactly.
You know? So sort of the foundation is there, and it is a tangible thing, and they can actually watch it physically grow.
Exactly.
And deplete, depending on how many things they want to buy with it.
Well, and then you make choices, right? Like, do you want to buy the name brand thing? And or do you want to find something that's not as expensive and looks similar?
I think we covered an article that suggested that like taking your kids shopping with you and just allowing them to help you pick things out and say, okay, well, there's this and it costs this much versus this and it costs this much. You know, because sometimes kids, I think, will just go and they'll, like I used to have this thing for Mr. Clean. Like, I don't know. Okay, I know this sounds so weird, but the commercial sold me. I was like, Mr. Clean works. And so my mom and I would go to the store and I would like run down the cleaning aisle and I was like, you have to get Mr. Clean. He makes it so clean. You know, it's like sometimes
the
like
ads worked for her.
Yeah, it's sometimes, you know, it's the pretty colors on the box or whatever it is, but to talk about costs and say, okay, these two things do essentially the same thing. You know what I mean? This one costs more. This one, weigh the pros and cons, you know, and just have those conversations to let them be a part of it, you know?
Exactly. I think that that's super important. And then the other thing that we're also going to be working with our daughter on, it's not quite, she's, you know, in like about a year or so is when she starts getting an allowance to have her work on the 30-30-40.
Right.
Which is, you know, you get to spend 30, you get to save 30, and then 40 you get, you put into an investment. So I think that that's really important because then you learn the value of doing all those things from an early age.
Like those skills. Yeah.
Exactly.
Our kids, they're going to be financial moguls. They are.
They're going to be more financially ready than we are.
That's definitely.
And that's what parenthood is, right? Learning from your own mistakes so that you can be a better parent.
Yes, hopefully fingers crossed every single day. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on another episode of The Wind Down. We love having you here. We wish you could put in your 2 cents, but you can always in comments. Please do. But we will see you next week to just dive in, do some deep chats, and drink some wine.